Okay, we are going to look today at facts, we're going to look at opinions, we're going to look at how opinions can be presented as facts. We are also going to look at false facts, so where facts have been falsely reported, either intentionally or otherwise. And we're also going to look at how facts themselves, things like statistics, can be twisted to fit a certain viewpoint. So to start with, I've just got here a short extract that I typed up from a fictional island somewhere in the Caribbean, part of a tourist brochure. So immediately this, with 2,345 visitors, we should be able to identify that straight away. That is a fact. That is something you can count. Is one of the most popular tourist destinations in the Caribbean for its size? We're in slightly dodgier territory here because you could argue, well, what makes one of the most popular tourist destinations? Does it have to be in the top 10%, the top 50%? Yeah, we can sort of broadly say that might well be a fact. The other two that I've highlighted, though, these are opinions. The first one is merely an opinion. They're given an opinion as to why they think they're so great. The second one here, we can promise you a holiday you will never forget, is what's known as an opinion presented as a fact. Reading into it, they are writing it as though it's a fact that this is the case. However, of course, it is clearly their opinion. Now, when it becomes more tricky is mostly when we start to look at newspaper articles. So you might see a headline like this: violent crime increases by staggering 27%. There are tips for identifying, and you've got a newspaper article to read later actually on this. There are tips for identifying when you're looking at dodgy statistics, or when statistics have been manipulated in some way. One of the best things to look for is this bit here, a staggering. If they are including some sort of emotive language in there, then they probably want you to think a certain way. Now, they've got that 27%, so technically that is going to be a fact. But what we're going to look at now is why it's a fact that shouldn't necessarily be taken at face value. So this is the article I broadly got that headline for, a newspaper that's taken that 27% and gone with it. Added their own interpretations to it. So, they've gone from that. Now, this first paragraph here is sort of contrasting the rise in murder rates and things like that with police investigating historic sex abuse and allegations against tabloid newspapers. Now, that's quite cunning, really, because what they've done here is they've presented this as a fact that the murder rate in England has risen for the first time in a decade. And then they've said, well, it's at a time when when detectives are investigating historic sex abuses and allegations against tabloid newspapers, as if those two can't both be investigated at once, which is at best a little misleading. It sort of plays on this idea that, oh, the police, they're investigating crimes that don't matter and they're not concentrating on the murders. Well, is that true? Well, it's certainly someone's opinion. They're going on there to quote some figures and some statistics, and they've got this bit here. However, police sources said contributory factors may have been the redeployment of detectives in London, as well as growing violence against migrants, including organised gangs. Police sources here, they haven't come out and said who these police sources are. A police source could be just a normal police officer, or it could be someone really high up. It could be a chief police constable or something like that. We don't know. The paper hasn't told us. And again, they're very much pushing this viewpoint where these murders are happening in London because of gangs and migrants and things like that. Is that strictly true? Well, police sources seem to think so, but how many other police officers agree with them? We don't know, do we? So, they're then going on to go into a bit more detail and sort of promote their particular point of view. But before we have a look a bit more at their particular point of view, let's have a look at some of the figures really, and see if we can get a better picture of why this increase might have occurred. So firstly, we'll have a look at this instance from the Office of National Statistics graph here in terms of violent crime. Now you can see there on that graph there is a very slight, you might be able to make it out, but there is an increase in violent crimes in 2014 and 15. And of course, as the newspaper article was considering, that will increase a little bit more. On the whole though, the trend does seem to continue to drop, and we can actually see here there are periods previously where it has spiked and gone back down. So actually we don't know really whether this could just be a statistical anomaly, whether this could just be a case of there has been a slight spike in crimes and it will return to normal. We don't know. We'd need a longer term model. If we were looking at something like this aspect of the graph here, where the crime has steadily been increasing year on year and year to reach a peak, then we'd start to worry. And similarly, if we're looking at this part of the graph here, where the crime rate is decreasing year on year on year, we'd be pretty happy. As it is, giving us a snapshot of 1 year's statistics isn't particularly useful when you're talking about violent crime, and certainly not enough to back up their speculations on the cause of this violent crime. Now, from the survey itself, you'll see here it says most of this rise is thought to be owing to improved crime recording by the police, leading to a greater proportion of reports of crime being recorded in the last year. So it's entirely possible that crime itself, although the article wants you to think that crime has gone up, crime itself hasn't gone up. What has gone up is the amount of people reporting crime. Now then going on to say improvements in recording of crime. So there have been improvements to how crimes are recorded, and this is what's shown us the increase. This is just a short insight into how statistics can be used to present a certain point of view. Obviously we'll go into a bit more detail of that later on.